Welcome everyone to episode 8 of the Dateable AF podcast. She's just a friend, or is she? Exes, besties, and blurred lines. We've all been there.
Woo!
The very close friend, the don't worry, we're just friends energy, but your gut, or maybe your fear, says otherwise. So, how do you know when to worry and when to trust?
Well, we've all dated someone who is best friends with their ex, and most of us have experienced the blurred boundaries and low key jealousy spiral we don't talk enough about.
And yes, we have something important to tell you guys today. This one hits a little close to home. You'll see why in a bit. But before we dive into our specific topic, we do want to answer a question from one of our listeners. We've been getting some great questions from you guys. We hope you'll keep sending them in. This week's question is, I met a fabulous woman and we hit it off immediately. We've been on a few dates, and I invited her to a social event for my job where she's likely to know some people. She acted kind of weird about it and ended up admitting she's not out in her professional life or to her family. Is this a red flag? Rachel, what do you think about that?
I think it can be a red flag. I think for sure that you have to be sure that you're on the same page and know how important it is for you to share that experience. I mean, I think I've seen it go both ways. I have seen people wrestle with it and break up over it and not be able to agree. And I have seen people who just accept where the other one is and they don't really need that from them.
Yep.
Well,
So I guess it could go either way.
What do you think, Dr. Kyle?
I think that it is a personal decision. I think for me personally, that would be a red flag because I need to be with someone who's confident. I need to be with someone who's okay in their own skin. And if you don't feel comfortable telling someone something as basic as who you're dating, that seems like a lack of confidence or maybe a fear that there's something you haven't worked through yet. But like you said, it may not be a big deal.
I had this conversation the other night, actually sitting with someone, and they've been in a similar situation, and their response, and I've heard this response before of, well, I'm out to the people that are important to me. And I don't really feel the need to carry a big flag and wave my gay flag everywhere. I know you've heard that too.
Yep.
And my response to it was, well, if the person that you were with was really offended and felt like you were pushing them in the closet and keeping them there, then you have a problem. But the problem is not your beliefs. It's the problem is you're not on the same page with the person you're trying to partner with. You have to be on the same page with them. And my other response was, I don't think you have to carry a big flag. And I've marched and I think it's important, but you don't have to march if you don't want to. But girl, I came flying out of that closet in 10th grade, and there is no room for me back in there for sure. And that being out to me is just being able to enjoy. It's not waving a banner. I don't need to make an announcement. Hey, I'm big queer girl coming into the event.
Yes.
But what I will say is that I want to enjoy all the liberties that my straight friends enjoy with their spouses or their girlfriends or boyfriends. If I want to hold your hand, then I expect to get to enjoy that.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's important to make a comparison that if you were dating a man, let's say, and you had a work function, would you, if you're someone who wouldn't bring your male date to a work function, then okay, maybe you're just a private person who doesn't want your coworkers to know anything about your personal life. If you wouldn't bring a date because that date is female, I think that says something different.
Definitely.
If you think about something as basic as sitting on an airplane and somebody says, "Oh, are you married?" A lot of times gay people freeze up in that situation because they're afraid they're about to have to come out to this person. If you were married to someone of the opposite sex, you would never hesitate. You'd be like, yes, my husband's at home. So why do we hesitate because we're in a same-sex partnership?
Yeah. I think those are things to think about. And again, just being sure that you're very clear. Like, I know I couldn't do that with someone But I think there are people that can. You just need to
Yep.
know where you sit with that.
Yes.
And
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Another bit of food for thought about that is that I've heard people say they don't want to come out to their families, for example, because they don't want to destroy the relationship. If your relationship with your family is so tenuous that they would exclude you for dating someone of the same sex, it's probably not as strong a relationship as you think it is. And so, what is it that you're really holding on to?
Definitely not authentic. That's
Right.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're loving you for someone who's not genuinely who you are. Anyway,
Yippers.
so my answer to that person's question is, for me personally, it's a red flag. And for someone else, it may not be. It may not be that important to be out. And thinking about the pretending that may inevitably go along with that, if you move in with that person, are they going to describe you as their roommate or their friend? And is that going to feel okay with you?
Their parents think you're a renter in the house.
Yeah. Yep. We've heard that story before.
Thank you guys for keep the questions coming. We love being able to answer your questions if we can, or at least talk about them.
Yes.
So now
Definitely.
we got to get on with this very exciting topic and reveal.
Yes. I love it. So, Rachel, why do you think that, particularly in lesbian relationships, but why do you think that queer friendship and romance get tangled the way that they do?
Uh, that's pretty easy from my point of view, is that because we build deep friendships, and that our friendships and our romantic relationships oftentimes carry equal weight, sometimes more on the friend side, and depending on where you are and all that, lesbian bed death, and it definitely carries more.
Sometimes that's all you got left.
for our listeners out there, I can explain that one to you if you need it. But um, yeah, I think that is the case. And again, I hate to stereotype, but I also think that oftentimes the male female relationships tend to stay a little bit more dynamic in the area of the romantic piece. And then they find those deeper friendships with their female friends out there, their male friends outside of it. And so I think it blurs some lines for us queer girls.
I think it does too. If you ask almost any heterosexual woman who her best friend is, they will almost all give you the name of a female friend. I think, like you said, you can't always generalize, but as a rule, women form deeper friendships and relationships with each other than they do with men. And
Yeah.
so I think when we form a deep relationship with our female partner, even if the romantic piece ends, we don't want that really important friendship to end.
And that's where it gets dicey. That's where the problems set in, because yes, when you break up, you want to hang on to that part of the relationship. And then how do you move into a new relationship if you're still trying to drag that one along and into it?
Yes, for sure.
What
And we'll get into some things later that will help you set yourself up for success. If you are dating someone new, but you want to stay friends with your ex, there are some guidelines that we can help you with around that. Do you think that it's supportive or stressful to try to stay friends with an ex after you've broken up?
if you do it too soon, it's stressful. If you give it due time, then it can be supportive. If the relationship, both sides of the street need to be clean. And we'll talk more about that, but both people have to be in it for the right reasons. And they have to both be ready to place that relationship in a different position.
In the friend zone, absolutely. And I think that that is probably one of the biggest issues that I see is that typically the person who ends the relationship is ready for it to be a friendship, and the person who got left is still wishing that it was romantic again. And so I think that dynamic can be tricky for a new dating partner coming on the scene, because they sense that that energy is still not totally clean and not totally in the friend zone.
And we were talking a little bit about how because you have a history with the ex, and you're just trying to build a history with the new person. So this person, I mean, if you're naturally falling back into wanting to text them about stuff that you need support with, or you um, know all of their family and you have these mutual friends and you're sharing jokes and things like that, I mean, that can be tough on a new relationship.
Yes, you have to be a really secure new person coming on the scene for that. And as the person who's trying to still be friends with your ex, you've got to take your new person into consideration, that you want to text your ex because you still have that shared history and you don't have to explain everything to that person. And sometimes the new person feels left out or doesn't, they don't know the background story. And so it can be tricky.
Is there ever a right time to have a sleepover? I just have to ask about that.
With your ex, you mean?
Yeah, well, I'm not. Yes.
Well, I will say that if it's a far in the past ex, I mean, I'll give an example. So I just want to clarify, everyone knows that my wife's name is Joe. Joe has a very good friend that they dated, I think when they were 20 years old, but many, many years ago. And since then they've been really good friends. Well, they just went on a trip together and stayed in a hotel together for 5 nights. And I did not bat an eye. I literally have no jealousy about that. I have no qualms about that. I don't have any doubt that they're just friends. Their energy is very clean. And so that is a sleepover that I feel fine about.
Yeah, it's a great example of plenty of time has passed. A relationship is completely platonic. It's very different. You know, I'm going to call her Monique.
Mhm.
Well, and but you can't rush that. I mean, you try to do that in the first year or two of something. No, it's
No,
probably not going to go over great.
no. And I want to be clear, this is like from 40 years ago, y'all. So this is, I feel like if there was anything romantic there, I would have figured it out. So
Joe is a goddess.
Joe is a goddess. I will agree. And, on a similar note, we have another friend named Veronica who I've seen her around several of her exes, and she still calls them pet names. She still touches them on the face. She still asks them to do tasks around her house, things like that, that feel very, very intimate. And I don't know, I think that might be hard for a new partner coming on the scene.
I'm pretty sure it would be. And I know that sometimes that other person wants to keep that person in that special place, even though they've split up.
Yes.
That's the other thing is just it has to be clean. Everybody needs to have moved on before you start trying to do that. So the other person needs to feel comfortable letting you go in those more intimate ways.
Yeah. And in the case that I just mentioned, I don't think Veronica actually wants to get back together with her exes. I think that she's just genuinely cares for them. But I think that sometimes those really intimate gestures can be intimidating to a new partner that comes on the scene.
Oh, was she dating Monique?
Yes, I think she was.
Okay. Got it. So,
So,
go ahead.
well, we have shared quite a bit of our personal lives with our listeners, and we've been sort of holding on to something that our listeners who know us well have asked us when we're going to discuss this. But we wanted to let the rest of you know that, surprise, Rachel and I are actually exes.
So some of you have been waiting for us to reveal this because many of people in our audience know this about us. And then others have alluded to, I know y'all are holding something back. Y'all
That's right.
keep
Some of you
saying
are very intuitive. You sensed it. And we've thrown bones out along the way, but we wanted to wait until you got a sense of us as podcast hosts before we drop that little bomb on you. But just to be clear, Rachel and I dated each other 30 years ago. And We
We
had
dated casually dated.
casually dated. I think we were together for what, 7 or 8 years?
8 years. Every time that we got
So
to
we went
tell
on a
them,
couple dates.
we got to tell the audience that every time we go in public and we meet someone new and they go, "Oh, how do y'all know each other?" I always just turn and
Oh.
wait to see what Sarah's going to say, because she says something different every time. "Oh, well, we kind of known each other. Well,
Mutual friends.
we met through work."
It's true. It's all true. It's just levels of disclosure. So, yes, we casually dated for about 7 years.
Including
Oh,
house and stuff, but
yeah. I mean, we
Well,
did
that-
own a house together, raised some kids for a few years, but it was very casual.
okay. So
Just kidding. But I think that in that way, we're actually a really good example of this, because what we did in order to get to the place we're in today is that we gave it some time. And we didn't try to immediately jump into being friends. Neither of us was ready for that. And that by the time we both had sort of moved on and developed new lives, we came back to being friends and remembered all the things that we really loved about each other.
one of the things that we've talked about that I really think is important is that sometimes you look back at a past relationship and you think that was a shit show and it was very dysfunctional, it was horrible, and you walk away and you have nothing good to take from it. And that is not, Sarah and I have mentioned that we walked away from that, gave it plenty of time. And when we reflect back, there were a lot of really healthy, wonderful things that we learned from that relationship.
Yes,
And
for sure.
that we have carried forward. And then the other piece of it is just the amount of time that you need to give something, and whether or not that person has enough value that you really want to keep them in your life. And that was certainly not in question for me. And I don't think for Sarah either.
No, absolutely. And
then
we both have exes that we've remained friends with, and we both have people we've dated that we did not remain friends with. And
yeah,
it's okay. It's okay either way.
right. And you can't force that. But there's also this whole idea of forgiveness. I think that it's really important that both people, if you're going to reflect back and you really want to build something new going forward, there are a couple of things that stand out to me. One is there's forgiveness that may need to take place.
Yes.
And the other is how the other person's partner, wife, if they have one, where do they fit in all of it?
Yes, I think that's such a good point. And just to give a little bit of background here, that Joe and I would go to events. Austin's still a fairly small town, and we would go to events and we would run into Rachel and her then partner. And every time we would interact with them, we would go home and Joe would be like, "I love Rachel so much. How come we don't hang out with her more?"
And you'd go,
finally, I was like, okay.
That's why Joe is my best friend.
I know. So she's the one that facilitated it. And here we are.
Talking about this.
That's right. So, but I do think if Joe had been weird about it, or she had felt uncomfortable with it in any way, then I probably would have, still, of course, I would have been friendly, but I don't think we would have ended up having the level of friendship we have today. Certainly wouldn't be hosting a podcast together.
No. And I adore Joe, and I love how secure she is. And I also really, it's important for me. I have a separate relationship with Joe. My relationship with Joe is not just tangled up with Sarah. There are other things that I share with Joe that are not just with Sarah. It's not all about her. Sometimes we talk about you. Did I mention that? That we talk about you sometimes?
I know it's got to all be favorable, so I'm not worried about it.
Only when you're being a bad girl.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Anyway, that to me is very important. I want Joe, it's always been very important for me to know how important she is to me, separate and aside from Sarah. And I think some of those things you have to think about.
For sure. You always want to be respectful of that other person. So if you find yourself on either side of this, let's say you are the person who wants to stay friends with your ex, or let's say you're dating someone who wants to stay friends with their ex, how do you think that you check in with yourself, your own gut feelings, like your jealousy or your confusion or your insecurity, without beating yourself up or feeling shameful about it?
I think that's harder when you're trying to force things together too soon, when you haven't allowed that time where both people feel like they can breathe and that they're just focused on one another and they're not dealing with an ex.
Mhm.
So I think that that's important. I think you're a lot more likely to have that jealousy and that discomfort creeping in if you're trying to push it together too soon.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
good point.
and
And
then
I
I think you just have to own it. You have to talk about it.
yeah, to say this feels scary to me. I think that that's one of the things that you did really well before jumping into the dating bee is that you had closure with your past relationship. You took some space. You didn't immediately jump into dating someone. And I think that probably made it easier on the person that you were dating because you had things to wrap up with your life. I mean, you guys had owned
Yeah,
several houses together, I think. And,
correct.
there were things that you had to wrap up so that it didn't seem quite so messy when you started dating again.
We did. And I do think that it's very difficult if you haven't settled in within yourself, whatever the discomfort is, or the disappointment, or the sadness, or whatever is around the breakup. Um, some people try to bring in somebody else in order to help them get past all that.
Mhm.
And I have been guilty of that,
Sure.
where, it's just easier to have another interest than to feel your feelings and have to address whatever makes you feel bad or sad or whatever. If you've made bad choices, all of that.
Yes, the thing is, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone. Not that we're not promoting that.
I love that. I'm going to remember that. I haven't heard that saying before, but
Well, I wish I could say I made it up, but I did not. Again, as your podcast therapist, I'm not condoning that, but I've heard that it's a method some people do try.
I can't say that I haven't tried it.
How'd that work out for you?
It took me to it sent me right to the therapist chair. That's where it sent me.
Yes.
2 years later. Um, well, the other thing is this idea of how you talk about it. And I think that it's very difficult if you're the one feeling jealous or insecure. I think it's very difficult to bring it up in a way that doesn't seem accusatory.
Yes. And one of the best ways to do that is to own your own feelings. So rather than saying you're spending too much time with your ex, you say, I feel scared sometimes when you spend a lot of time with your ex. So you're owning that you feel scared. You're not accusing the other person of doing something wrong.
When you do something like that, what do you expect any other person to do about that?
I think it just opens up a conversation because maybe the other person has no idea. Because to them, it's genuinely just a friendship. And they're like, oh, gosh, I had no idea that was making you insecure. What do you need around that? And then it opens up a way for both of you to talk about how to get your needs met.
Yeah. Is it okay for the person that doesn't have the ex to ask for the person to give them a little time to break away from that other person for a while? Is that a
I think
legitimate request?
you can ask for anything you want, and the person may or may not honor that request. But I think it's an okay thing to ask for. I think one of the things we're not particularly talking about red flags yet, but we can sort of jump into that if the person doesn't want to tell their ex they're dating you, that seems like a red flag.
Oh, yes.
And so that, like, oh, I don't want to go to that event because we might run into my ex. Well, why would that scare you? Why would you be afraid to tell the ex that you're going on a date or that you are dating someone? That's a sign that you're still protecting them in some way or you're not comfortable. If if you had a best friend, you would definitely call your best friend and tell them you had a date. That's an exciting thing that we want to tell our best friends about. If you're not excitedly calling your ex to tell them about a date, why not? Is it because they're truly not your friend yet?
Yeah, and that makes me think about also this sort of being tender or thoughtful. If you have just come out of a serious relationship with social media and all of that, I would also give some consideration to when you decide to post on Facebook or with this new person or show up at an event where you know they're going to be and you know it's going to hurt their feelings and because they're still just feel sad about it. I don't think there's any crime in that. Uh, I think that you have to be upfront and either check in with the person that you're newly dating to see how important it is that you take that stand at that time. Uh, and or be sure and give the other person sort of a heads up and say, "Hey, I'm not trying to rub this in your face. This is a place where I need to be. It's appropriate for me to bring this person. And I just want to let you know." And the other piece of that is if are, you have to be very clear with yourself about your intentions of putting it in their face. As I've seen people use it as a way to make the other person jealous, even though they say they don't want them.
That is true. And I also want to play devil's advocate with you a little bit because if our listeners have taken our advice from previous episodes, you're going to give yourself a break. Ideally, you're going to break it off with one person. You're going to give yourself some time to heal. You're going to give that other person time to heal before you jump right in with a new person. If when you start dating the new person, the ex is still jealous or still going to have a problem with that, they're not on the friendship train yet. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, I'm best friends with my ex. We're just friends, but I can't, like, quote unquote, throw this in their face. You're going on a date with someone. You're not throwing anything in their face. And if they're still hurt by it, you can't be on the friendship train yet. They got to go to therapy. They got to do some more work around it before they're ready for all that. So just keeping in mind, if you're truly just friends with this person, you're going to be open with who you're newly dating. And if you don't feel like you can be open, probably not ready to be friends yet.
And I had, we'll call her Monique. I had a very interesting discussion with a Monique in my life about that very thing. And it was really difficult for me to understand that they were extremely clear that they had zero interest in hanging out with, being a part of, or around this other person's wife. And I don't know the other people in it, but I will tell you that all my it seemed like a giant red flag to me that what they were wanting from that person was something they used to get from them.
Mm.
That special
So,
time, that special attention.
so they were friends with their ex, but they didn't want
Mm.
anything to do with their ex's new partner. I see.
Yes.
Yeah, that feels like a red flag to me too. And if I were the wife, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
That's hard to know. I mean, I wouldn't think you would.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tricky situation. So how do you know, let's say you're the new person on the scene. What are some signs that everything is okay with your date being friends with their ex? And what are some signs that maybe everything's not quite okay?
Well, I think when everything seems okay, it is what you were talking about earlier, that they're they're open about their time with this person, that you just sense that this person is also available to you in some ways. I mean, you're never going to be the same kind of friend necessarily, but that they are entering your life in what seems like a more balanced, appropriate way.
Mhm.
That it is not all just about the two of them texting or talking about things from their past, that there's an effort for you guys to build something moving forward that's about you guys moving together into the future and not all the things from the past.
I think that's really a good point. And in other words, if you go into that interaction and you're feeling like the third wheel, that doesn't seem healthy, and that doesn't feel like a sustainable way to run a friendship.
No. And I also do think that the obsessive texting is a negative way. I mean, that would send up a red flag to me if there was just this daily barrage of texting and especially if they're pulling on this person to still fill their emotional needs. It's different if it's about podcasting or, or it can be about your highlight of the day, but it's really different when you're trying to lean on that person to help you work through a lot of problems in the ways that you used to.
Yes, that is the space for your partner to be in. And if you don't have a partner, it's the space for a friend, but not in a way that takes that person away from their current relationship.
I don't think it really allows your new person to actually fill that space for you. I just don't think it opens up room for them to prove that they can be that for you.
Yes, because that path is so familiar with your ex, the path of reaching out to them, or though you know exactly how they're going to respond or how they're going to meet your needs. And so it can be easier than trying to forge a new path with your new person.
Yeah, definitely.
This is true.
So it seems that we've exposed ourselves here
Yes.
to our audience. Now, y'all can't send us a lot of questions about this.
I mean, you can send them. We might not answer them, but send them on in. I think it does free us up to refer to things in a different way than we have been. So I think that'll be kind of fun.
That'll be nice. I don't have to call you Monique or Veronica or
You
vice
just
versa.
call it like it is.
Yeah. So I will tell you, did we talk about, I think maybe on one of the first ones we did. If you're new to us, we do hope you go back and listen to our other episodes. If you're just coming into this episode, then this is about one of the things I think I mentioned was the road trip that I went on with Sarah and Joe, where Sarah ate all my Twizzlers.
Do we have to keep bringing that up?
Yes, we do, because it's important to me. But that's one of those things that was fun and familiar, actually, was that foolish me had forgotten that when I get my invite to have the snack and I refuse it, then I have to understand that the snack may no longer be available.
That snack's going to be gone, friend. That's right. Just so much time had passed that you had forgotten that endearing thing about me.
It's very endearing.
But I will eat the whole pack of Twizzlers.
Needless to say, I buy the family pack now.
Yes.
When we go to Colorado, I'll be bringing the family pack, a bunch of them.
Perfect. That sounds amazing. I'll look forward to it. I'm going to go to Costco. Get the double family pack.
Bring your own damn Twizzler.
Oh, I will now. Now that I know I'm going to have to share them, I'm going to bring my own. So going back to what do you do if you're dating someone and they're friends with their ex and you're starting to feel insecure about it? I just want to remind you that you bring it up by talking about your own feelings, and so that you don't sound like the insecure person. So you might say something like, I'm noticing something that's hard for me and I want to talk about it. So you're not accusing them of anything bad. You're just talking about your own difficulty in figuring all this out. And you're setting boundaries for yourself. You're not setting an ultimatum. I've probably said this in previous episodes, but a boundary is never about changing someone else's behavior. It's about letting them know where you draw the line and what you're going to do in response to a behavior. So in other words, you probably wouldn't want to tell someone they can't be friends with their ex, but you can be honest with them about how it impacts you. And you can decide if the way they interact with their ex is sustainable for you.
And I don't think telling someone they can't be friends with their ex it's never effective.
No.
I think it just tends to make people want to dig their heels in. It makes them defensive. instead of you just owning how you feel about it and saying it and saying how it makes you feel, because otherwise that person, it just gives them something to push up against.
Yes.
Maybe
And
maybe even when they don't really care to push up against it.
yeah, they may just dig their heels in so they don't feel controlled by you. If you're the person on the other side of this, if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm having a hard time with your friendship with your ex," a good response is asking them what they need around it. And maybe they need something that doesn't feel reasonable to you. But maybe what they need is a little more closeness or a little more transparency. And that seems pretty easy. So what you want to do is facilitate the new person feeling secure. You don't want to take care of them. That's not your job, but your job is to be transparent and let them know that it's okay.
That one is hard for me. Of somebody, yes, you need to ask for what you need, but if you're on the other end of it and you can't really give them what it feels like, they're asking something that is an overreach or something you just can't swallow or you actually don't buy into. I don't know where you go from there.
Yeah, it may not be the relationship for you if that's the case. And that'll be a hard call to make, but otherwise you're going to just end up in a headbutting contest.
Yeah. Well, and we continue. There's a theme that runs through all of our episodes, and that is clear communications. Just making sure that you're not trying to guess what somebody else is thinking. You're not assuming that they're feeling a certain way, that you just take responsibility for asking, to be asking for clarification, to be sure that if that's what you're reading, that it's indeed what's happening, and that you just are open and not scared to just put something out there.
Yes, absolutely. I think healthy relationships thrive on clarity. They don't thrive on guessing games. So just be direct about it. And if something feels blurry to you, be honest with the other person and check in with them about it. And you may not like their answer, but at least you're bringing it forward.
And we have been clear that we think, believe in the fact that exes can be friends. And as Sarah mentioned, we have some exes that we're not friends with. And then we definitely have a couple of exes that we're very good friends with that will be our lifelong friends and will go to the end of time with us likely. And that the key ingredient there is giving that enough time where you're moving from the old to the new and the new needs an opportunity.
Absolutely. And so just remember that this isn't about being cool with everything. It's about being real with yourself and being direct with the person that you're dating and giving that time to unfold.
Well, I know that we are having a guest on our next show.
Yes, we're so excited. We're going to be having our first guest. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be someone that you're going to really love hearing from. So that'll be a little something to look forward to in our next episode. And as always, we want you to keep sending us your stories. We want you to keep following us on Instagram. We're giving some dating tips on there. Our Instagram handle is @GetDateable. And please share our podcast with your friends. We're building up our listenership and we really want to share our message with as many people as possible. So just hit the share button and share it with a couple of your closest friends. We would really appreciate that.
And remember, we come out every Thursday morning is a new episode. And if you are a new listener, please feel free to go back and listen to the beginning episodes. They're all available to you.
Yep, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, everywhere you get your podcasts. So yes, so thank you so much.
We may, who knows, maybe we'll be doing a podcast from some venue soon. We're hoping to stoke something up about that. So that's a teaser for something to come.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you again for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
Remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.